Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. The call connected after 2 rings. I held the phone to my ear, staring at the flickering candle on the table as a server passed by with a tray of champagne flutes. Michelle. I kept my voice low. Oh, she said flatly. You actually went. I blinked. It's our anniversary. There was a pause. I could hear chatter in the background. She wasn't alone. David. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously. My fingers tensed around the glass stem. It's not just any day, Michelle. It's 10 years. Her laugh was soft, but cutting. 10 years of what, exactly? I sat back slowly. Excuse me. You treat this marriage like it's a hobby you keep polishing. Like the more routines we follow, the more real it'll feel, she said, almost like she was reading from a script. You're clinging to an idea. That's not love, David. That's fear. Where are you? My voice sharpened. Don't dodge it. Where are you right now? A sigh. Out. With people who aren't obsessed with anniversaries and monogamy, like it's some sort of prize. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, heart racing. So you're saying fidelity is outdated now? You said it, not me. I see. So this dinner, this whole evening, was just some form of theater? You made it theater, she snapped. You made a production out of candles and cliches. That's not intimacy, David. That's just routine. I could hear the clink of a wine glass on her end. I waited here for over an hour, I said quietly. I left work early. I picked the place you said you loved. That was 2 years ago, she cut in. Stop pretending we're still in that phase. And what phase are we in now? I asked, jaw clenched. She didn't answer. Just silence. That kind that stretches too long and says everything. Is there someone else? I asked it bluntly now, out in the open. She scoffed. What does it matter? It matters because I'm still wearing this ring, I said, tapping it against the edge of the table. Because I still show up. Because I still try. Oh, David, you always think trying is enough. Better than giving up and rewriting the rules mid-game. I fired back. Maybe the game was broken to begin with. I stood up from the table, napkin falling from my lap to the floor. The waiter glanced over, hesitant. You know what? I said into the phone. Don't worry. This dinner wasn't for us anyway. It was for the memory of who we used to be. That version of us is gone, she replied, almost softly. You should stop chasing ghosts. I nodded to myself, swallowed hard, then whispered, yeah, I see that now. And I hung up. I sat back down, alone with 2 plates of food, mine cooling slowly, hers untouched. The candle kept flickering, casting long shadows across a table built for 2. The piano in the corner played something slow and sad. The steak was perfect. She'd never know that. And I'd never forget. It was one of those perfect New England afternoons, sun drifting low through the trees, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, and laughter clinking against wine glasses. The backyard belonged to a couple we knew from Michelle's firm. Big house, big personalities, and enough Brie and Merlot to keep everyone mellow. I didn't want to be there, but Michelle insisted. She said it'd look weird if I skipped it. Her words, not mine, and I figured after what happened at the restaurant, maybe she was trying to smooth things over. Turns out, she wasn't. She was in rare form, laughing too loud, complimenting strangers she normally called walking LinkedIn profiles. She looked beautiful, as always, in that backless navy dress, but she also looked like she hadn't remembered she had a husband. I'd spent most of the afternoon near the garden, sipping slowly, exchanging polite conversation about renovations and school districts with the husbands I barely knew. Michelle, meanwhile, held court near the fire pit, surrounded by a small group of women and a few younger guys who clearly thought her confidence was intoxicating. Then I heard her voice rise above the rest. Honestly, never get married, Michelle declared, raising her glass. It's a trap, like walking into a cage wearing a tux. The group burst out laughing, the kind of laugh that isn't even real, just noise. I stopped mid-step near the bar, back half-turned, unsure if I'd really heard her right. Then came the next voice. Well, said someone with a smirk you could hear. If you're done with him, maybe I'll try your husband. I turned just in time to see her, Laura, Michelle's younger sister. She leaned back in her chair, long legs crossed, glass dangling from her fingertips, her eyes fixed right on me with a slow, deliberate smile. Michelle's face froze. The circle went quiet, just for a beat, long enough for everyone to hear the shift in the air. What did you just say? Michelle asked, Her voice clipped, but not low. Laura shrugged. I said if you think marriage is such a trap, maybe I'll give it a shot with someone who still believes in it. You think that's funny? Michelle snapped, now standing fully upright. Laura didn't flinch. I think what's funny is watching you trash your husband in front of people you barely know. I hadn't moved. Still standing there, halfway between the bar and the table. Every eye was on us now. The crowd was trying to look casual, but no one was pretending not to listen. You don't know what you're talking about, Michelle hissed. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Laura replied, still smiling. You mock the man who's still trying to hold it together. That's not edgy, Michelle. That's pathetic. You little brat, Michelle muttered, stepping closer. You think you can sit there with your wine and your sarcasm and judge my marriage? Laura's smile vanished. I think I've seen enough to know who's been faking it. That landed. Michelle's jaw tightened, but she was out of witty one-liners. She turned to me, trying to reclaim control. David, she said. Say something. I met her eyes for a long second. Then I shook my head. I don't think there's anything left to say. And I turned and walked. But I didn't get far. Behind me, Michelle and Laura were still going. You always wanted him, didn't you? Michelle hissed. You always had that smug little thing for my life. Laura laughed sharply. I never wanted your life, Michelle. I just think if you don't want him, someone should at least respect him. You are disgusting. And you're boring. The group didn't know where to look. Someone dropped a wine glass. A guy in a sweater vest tried to redirect the music louder, but it was too late. The party had broken in half. I kept walking, past the arbor, through the gate, out onto the street where the cars were lined up. I didn't leave right away, just leaned on the hood of mine and stared out at the hedge. A minute later, footsteps approached. I shouldn't have said that. Laura's voice came from behind me. Not like that. Not there. I turned. She stood with her shoes in her hand now, the same way she always did when she was done pretending. You didn't lie, I said. She nodded, then added, for what it's worth, I meant it. I looked at her, at the calm in her expression, at the sincerity that was somehow louder than Michelle's entire performance. And for the first time, I saw the divide clearly, not between two sisters. Between someone who saw me and someone who used to. The house was quiet when we got home. Too quiet. Like it was waiting to see what I'd do next. Michelle had barely said a word during the drive. She stared out the window, her arms folded, her jaw set in stone. I didn't try to break the silence. I didn't need to. The front door clicked behind us, and I went straight upstairs. The master bedroom looked untouched, like it always did, cold, curated, like a hotel suite no one ever really lived in. I opened the closet slowly, took out the old duffel bag from the top shelf, and laid it on the bed. Then I started packing. Shirt, jeans, my running shoes, a framed photo of my dad and me from years back. Just the basics. No drama. Behind me, footsteps approached fast. You're not serious, Michelle said from the doorway. Her voice was shaking, but not from anger. I didn't turn, just folded another shirt and dropped it in. David, stop. You're overreacting. I zipped the side pocket. No, I'm reacting exactly as I should have weeks ago. Her voice rose. It was a joke. A bad one. Fine. But you're really going to walk away over some wine party nonsense? I finally looked at her. That's not what tonight was, Michelle. That wasn't a joke. That was public humiliation, dressed up like charm. You know I didn't mean it like that. I don't care how you meant it, I said, not loud, but sharp. You stood in front of people I barely know, laughed about our marriage like it was a burden you never wanted, and let your sister treat me like an auction item. And you didn't stop her. You only got mad when you lost control. Michelle stepped into the room now, voice desperate. Okay, I messed up. But can we please talk like adults? Without all this packing and storming out. I'm not storming out. I'm stepping away. I looked around the room, then back at her. Because I don't tolerate being mocked in front of strangers. Not from someone who vowed to stand beside me. She opened her mouth, closed it, then stepped closer. You're seriously leaving? I already left, Michelle. You just didn't notice until now. The silence between us swelled. She looked around the room like it might offer her a way out. A thread to pull to undo the unraveling. But nothing was there. Where are you even going? She whispered. Somewhere that feels like mine, even if it's just for a night. Her voice cracked. David, don't do this. I zipped the bag shut. She moved toward me suddenly, hands out like she wanted to pull me back. Not physically, but emotionally. You always fix things, she said. You're the fixer. That's who you are. Not this time, I said softly. Not when I'm the thing you keep breaking. I walked past her slowly, each step measured, solid. She didn't follow. As I reached the stairs, I could hear her breathing shift, shallow, uneven. Not crying, but close. Still, I didn't turn back. The house felt both cavernous and suffocating all at once. Every picture on the wall, every rug, every carefully chosen color, none of it felt like home. Not anymore. The hotel room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet, just sterile enough to remind you you didn't belong there. I dropped the duffel bag at the foot of the bed, sat down stiffly, and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. There were no answers. Just a slow-moving ceiling fan and the sound of the ice machine humming down the hall. I didn't sleep much. Couldn't. Not from anger. That had already burned out. What I felt now was colder. Hollow. Like a part of me had cracked and nothing rushed in to fill the space. Michelle hadn't called. Not once. Morning came too fast. I got up, showered, dressed, and took my coffee to go. No breakfast. Just movement. I sat in my car in a strip mall parking lot, scrolling listings on my phone. Apartments, sublets, temporary rentals. Most were in the city, too far. Others were available in theory, but listed at prices like they included gold flooring. Furnished 2-bedroom, 6-month minimum, no pets, $3,800 a month. I exhaled sharply and locked my phone. Then, out of habit, I called Nolan. Nolan's been my best friend since college. Engineer. Single dad. Honest to a fault. He picked up on the second ring. Hey man, he said. You okay? Left the house last night, I told him. It was time. A pause. Then, good. About damn time. We talked for a few minutes. He didn't ask questions I didn't want to answer. Just listened, made the occasional sarcastic remark, kept it light. Then he said it. Couch is open. It's lumpy, and Mia's golden doodle thinks she owns it, but it's yours if you need it. I smiled despite myself. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't. I offered. Nolan, I'll sleep on the floor. Don't worry about it. Exactly why I'm saying no, I said. You've got Mia this week, and I know she's got her school routine. He hesitated, then sighed. All right, but only if you find something better today. Got it. Got it. We hung up. I sat there for a while longer, not sure where to go next. Then buzz. Text from an unknown number at first, but I knew the tone immediately. Laura, heard you're hotel hopping. My guest room's empty. It's yours if you want it. No strings, just quiet. I stared at the message for a long moment. I didn't have the energy to overthink it. That'd be helpful. Thank you, I replied. Her response came back quick. I'll leave the door unlocked. Come whenever. I drove over late afternoon. Her townhouse was modest, tucked on a quiet street lined with silver maples and retired couples walking their dogs. She opened the door before I could knock. Laura looked like she hadn't been trying to impress anyone. Jeans, a loose sweater, bare feet. And yet there was something unshakably poised about her. Long night? She asked. Longest in a while. She nodded and stepped aside. Guest rooms upstairs, last door on the right. Clean sheets, space heater, and a closet if you're staying more than a night. I looked at her. You sure about this? I wouldn't have offered if I wasn't. I stood in the entryway for a second, the quiet wrapping around me like a warm blanket I hadn't realized I missed. Thanks, Laura. She shrugged lightly, almost smiling. I figured someone should offer you a little dignity this week. The way she said it, not sarcastic, not soft, just honest, landed deeper than she knew. I carried the duffel upstairs, closed the door gently behind me, and finally, for the first time in over 24 hours, let myself breathe. The guest room was small but peaceful. Pale blue walls, a lamp with a warm glow, and the soft creak of old floors whenever I moved. I'd just started reading when the doorbell rang downstairs, twice, fast, followed by an angry knock. Then Laura's voice. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. I heard the door swing open hard. Are you out of your mind? Michelle's voice tore through the townhouse like a blade. Seriously, Laura? You bring him into this house? Laura's reply was dry as dust. It's not a hostage situation. He walked in through the front door. I swear to God, if this is some pathetic power play, it's a guest room, Michelle, not a seduction lair. I set the book down and stood up. The shouting wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't about to hide upstairs like a secret. I came down slowly, landing each step with calm on purpose. Michelle turned as soon as I appeared. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands shaking even as she pointed one at me. What kind of man runs to his wife's sister after one little argument? I met her gaze and didn't blink. It wasn't one argument. Oh, don't be dramatic, she snapped. You embarrassed me at that party. You just stood there like some helpless puppy while my sister came at me. Laura sat on the couch, legs crossed, swirling wine like it was a hobby. Correction, I came at the truth. Michelle spun toward her. Stay out of this, Laura. No. You marched into my home, screaming like a soap opera villain. You don't get to tell me when to speak. Michelle looked back at me, her voice desperate now. You think this is normal? Running to my sister for comfort? You two always had that thing. That smug connection. There was no connection. I cut in. There was decency, which is more than you've shown me lately. Her expression faltered. I kept my tone level. I'm here because I had nowhere else. And frankly, that's not your business anymore. She stared at me, wounded and furious. You're unbelievable. No. I just finally stopped tolerating the unbelievable. Silence clung to the room for a moment. Thick, electric. Then Laura raised her glass. You can let yourself out, Michelle. Unless you plan on giving the neighbors a full show. Michelle opened her mouth, closed it again. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. You're both pathetic, she muttered, stepping back. Thanks for the diagnosis, Laura replied cheerfully, leaning into the couch cushions. Michelle gave one last glare, split between both of us, then turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame on the hallway shelf rattled. The silence left behind was almost restful. Laura didn't move. She just took a slow sip of wine and glanced over at me. Well, she said. That was loud. I sat on the armrest of the chair across from her, exhaling through my nose. She's not used to being shut out. No, Laura said. She's used to setting the stage. And you finally walked off it. I nodded slowly. And I didn't miss my cue. Laura smiled faintly, more proud than smug now. Welcome to intermission. Time moves differently when no one's asking you where you're going. At first, I kept expecting it. The phone call, the text, the doorbell, some attempt from Michelle to restart the cycle. But weeks passed, and nothing came. Not even silence disguised as an apology. Laura never pushed. She didn't ask me how long I planned to stay or whether I thought about going back. She just lived her life and made space for me inside it without making a spectacle of it. That first week was quiet. I'd work remotely during the day from the guest room or at the kitchen island, and we'd barely talk until the evenings. But slowly, something shifted. It started with walks. Laura would knock on the guest room door around 7, casual as ever. Walk. One word. No pressure. Just an offer. And I always said yes. We'd stroll through the neighborhood while the sun dipped behind the rooftops, sometimes in silence, sometimes not. At first we kept to safe subjects. Her work as a freelance copywriter, my job in compliance, the neighbor's excessive lawn decor, but gradually, the conversation deepened. I don't remember when we started talking about regret, or childhood, or the moment each of us stopped recognizing the person we were with. One night, after a long walk that turned into a detour through a nearby park, I said, You ever feel like you stayed too long just because leaving meant admitting something failed? Laura didn't answer right away. She just watched the light ripple across a little man-made pond before replying. Staying too long is its own kind of failure, but it feels quieter, so people pick it. I stared at her, surprised. That's, honestly, exactly what it felt like. She smiled without looking at me. Yeah, I know. We got used to falling into these conversations, not heavy every time, but always real. No filler. No pretending. Laura cooked most nights, though she always claimed she didn't know what she was doing. I offered to pitch in, and she let me, on the condition I never tried to measure anything. This kitchen doesn't believe in measuring cups, she'd say, pouring spices straight from the jar with the confidence of someone who understood flavor the way musicians understand rhythm. Dinners became our ritual, jazz playing softly from her Bluetooth speaker, wine glasses half full, plates between us, and stories drifting across the table like old friends. She asked thoughtful questions. She actually listened. And I found myself laughing again, not the kind you force for peace, but the kind that sneaks up on you. One night, I mentioned a story about my dad, something I hadn't told anyone in years. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, genuinely interested. Did he ever remarry? She asked. No, I said, stirring the last of my pasta. Said he tried once, but the minute someone made him feel like a project, he walked. Laura raised her glass. Smart man. He wasn't always. But he learned. She smiled at that, like it meant more than I realized. Later that week, while folding my clothes on the edge of the guest bed, I realized something strange. I hadn't thought about Michelle all day. Not even once. It didn't feel like forgetting. It felt like healing. One night, as we finished a shared bowl of popcorn on the couch, Laura nudged my knee gently with hers. You know, she said, I didn't offer that room out of pity. I looked over. No. She shook her head. I just couldn't stand the idea of you wandering around some depressing rental with beige carpets and no one to talk to. I smiled. Well, mission accomplished. She tilted her head. You doing okay? I'm not sure what okay means right now. But this. I looked around the living room, the lamp's soft glow casting gold across the walls. This is the first time I've felt steady in a while. Steady's good, she said. It's quiet power. And that word stuck with me. Not the power part, but the quiet. Michelle was loud. Always had been. Laura? Laura was different. She didn't fill the silence. She made room in it. The rain had started just after 7, a light, tapping rhythm against the windows. Laura lit candles in the living room without a word, filling the space with amber warmth, the kind that made everything feel a little softer, a little more intentional. She was already in her spot on the couch by the time I came down, legs tucked under her, blanket draped across her knees, and a half glass of Malbec in her hand. The record player was spinning some old jazz, warm horns, lazy piano. It wasn't loud, just there. I sat beside her, not too close, not far either. The kind of distance that had become natural between us. Comfortable. She handed me my glass. To quiet power, she said. I clinked mine against hers gently. To quiet power. We didn't say much for the first half hour. She leaned her head back, watching the candlelight flicker across the ceiling, and I watched the rain blur the streetlights outside. Then she spoke, almost too softly for the words to land. You know, she said, most people would have broken already. I looked over. Most people don't have to listen to jazz in someone else's house to survive their marriage falling apart. She smiled at that. True. But still, you've handled this better than I expected. Better than Michelle expected, too, I said. She thought I'd crawl back within a week. Laura turned toward me, her voice a little quieter now. I know what she said about marriage being a trap, but she wasn't talking about you. She was talking about herself. I met her eyes. She doesn't know how to be loved, David, she added. Not the way you tried to love her. Her hand brushed against mine then, just fingertips at first, a touch more tender than casual. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. You deserve to be loved back, she said, her voice barely above the music. Like that. Not halfway. Not when it's convenient. I could feel the shift in the air. Like we were teetering on a word not yet spoken. Laura leaned in a little closer, just enough for me to feel the warmth of her shoulder against mine. Her eyes searched mine. The moment stretched, and I let it sit, just long enough to feel the weight of it. Then, slowly, I pulled my hand back. Not harsh, not cold, just honest. Her eyes didn't flinch. She held the gaze. Even if it's broken, I said quietly, I meant my vows. The words hung between us like something suspended on a single breath. Laura didn't argue, didn't retreat in embarrassment. She just gave a slow, knowing nod, one part understanding, one part acceptance. I figured, she murmured. The room fell into stillness again. Not awkward, not tense, just still. The jazz played on. The rain kept falling. The wine grew warm in our hands. And the rest of the night passed in silence. Not because we had nothing to say, but because everything important had already been spoken. It was a Saturday morning, gray sky, cool air, and that quiet hum before the world wakes up. I was halfway through folding laundry when Laura called out from downstairs. David, she said, not loudly, but something in her tone stopped me cold. I came down the stairs, towel still in my hand, and saw her standing by the front door, arms crossed. She's here. I didn't need to ask who. Michelle stood just outside the screen, damp hair clinging to her cheeks, her hands clutched around a paper coffee cup like it was the only thing holding her together. She looked up the moment I stepped into view, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't wear that polished, sharp-edged confidence. She looked wrecked. I opened the door slowly. Can we talk? She asked, eyes red. Please. I stepped out onto the porch. Laura didn't follow, but I felt her presence behind me, solid, still, watching, but not interfering. Michelle didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at me, lips trembling like she was trying to decide whether to speak or cry. Then, in a small, unsteady voice, she said, "I messed up." I stayed silent. I know that sounds cheap. I know it's late, but I need to say it. Her voice cracked. She dropped to her knees, right there on the porch, like some part of her had finally caved under its own weight. "I treated you like a backup plan," she whispered. "I treated our marriage like it was something I could pause, pick apart, make fun of, like it wasn't holding your heart." Tears spilled freely now. She didn't bother wiping them. I thought I was stronger than I was. I thought freedom meant doing whatever I wanted. But all I did was push away the one person who actually showed up every day. I looked down at her, unsure of what to say, or if I should say anything at all. "I've been seeing a counselor," she added quickly, like that might buy back the last 10 years. "I've been working through all of it, and I know I can't undo what I did. She took a breath. "I want to try again. I want you to come home. I want us to have a clean start." She reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, and held it up. "I made a reservation. Rooftop dinner, just the two of us. Nothing dramatic. I just want to talk. You don't have to say yes. I'll sit there alone if I have to, but I'll be there." She set the envelope down on the porch between us, then slowly stood, still shaking. "You always listened," she said, "even when I didn't deserve it." I still hadn't spoken. She nodded faintly, accepting my silence, and turned to go. But just before she reached the steps, I finally said it. "Maybe it's time to talk." She stopped, turned back to me, eyes wide, breath held. "I'll come," I said. "That's all I'm promising." She nodded again. Nothing else. No attempt to hug me. No show. Just relief. When the door shut behind me, Laura was already back on the couch, legs crossed, flipping through a magazine without looking at me. "Well," she said, "that happened." I leaned against the wall, arms folded. She looked different. Laura didn't look up. Regret has a way of changing a face. I stayed quiet. "You going?" she asked. "Yeah, just to talk." She nodded. "Good. Closure matters." I turned toward the stairs. "David." I stopped. "No matter what you decide," she said, eyes finally meeting mine. "Don't pick it just because it's familiar. Pick it because it's right." I held her gaze for a moment. Then I went upstairs to pack. The rooftop had been staged like a second chance. String lights hung above linen-covered tables. A quiet jazz trio played in the corner, their instruments barely louder than the hum of city traffic below. And the sky, that soft orange glow of dusk settling over the skyline, made it feel like something beautiful could still be salvaged. Michelle had rented out the entire space. She met me at the elevator with a careful smile. "You look good," she said. I nodded politely. "So do you." She wore that burgundy dress, the one from our 7th anniversary. It didn't escape me that she remembered. "Come on," she said, leading me inside. "Dinner's almost ready." I expected it to be just us. But the second we stepped onto the rooftop, I saw them, for guests already there, gathered near the bar. Familiar faces. Too familiar. "Michelle," I said quietly. "What is this?" "I invited a few people," she said quickly. "Just close friends. They've seen what we've been through. I thought it might help if I stopped walking. I came here to talk, not be a performance piece." "They're here to support us," she insisted. "This isn't a trap, David." I didn't say anything. I just kept walking toward the table she'd set for two, pretending the others weren't there. Across the rooftop, I caught a glimpse of someone by the far railing, quiet, still. Laura. She was here too? Michelle must have seen the confusion in my face. "She showed up on her own," she said quickly. "Said she didn't want to interfere. Just wanted to make sure you had someone in the room." Laura didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. I sat down. Dinner started smoothly enough. Light conversation. Michelle was composed, softer than I remembered. She asked about work, my sleep schedule, even mentioned how she'd cut back on wine. And then, midway through the meal, it happened. A laugh rang out from the bar. Too loud for this kind of evening. One of Michelle's friends, Tessa, I think, tilted her wine glass and called out, slurring just slightly. "So, Michelle, how's your new guy?" The entire rooftop froze. Michelle's fork hovered midair. Her smile died instantly. "Tessa," she said tightly. "Not the time." Tessa blinked. "What? I thought you said things were over." I mean, this isn't some reunion, right? Michelle stood up fast, knocking her chair back. Outside. Now. Oh, come on. Tessa laughed nervously. He was cute. What was his name again? Troy? Or get out? Michelle's voice dropped low. Controlled. Furious. Tessa's smirk faded. Seriously? Michelle marched over, grabbed her arm, and guided her to the exit. The trio of musicians stopped playing as the tension strangled the air. The other guests looked everywhere but at me. Out. Michelle snapped, shoving the door open. Tessa stumbled out, heels clacking down the rooftop steps. Silence stretched long and wide. Michelle turned back, face pale, trembling slightly. I didn't know she'd say that. She didn't know we were. I didn't tell her. She looked at me like she wanted me to throw her a lifeline. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Laura still sat at the edge of the rooftop, wineglass in hand, watching the entire thing unfold like a woman who'd already seen this film before. Our eyes met. She didn't smirk, didn't shake her head, just gave me a small, steady look that said you knew. And she was right. Michelle returned to the table, eyes wide, breathing shaky. David. I didn't. She wasn't even a real. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped back against the tile. I looked at her once. No anger. No raised voice. Just a gaze so calm it cut deeper than any outburst ever could. Stone cold. Then I turned toward the edge of the rooftop and walked away. The guests were gone. The musicians had packed up. Even the candles flickered low now, like they were tired of pretending to be romantic. Only Michelle and I remained in the loft, and it felt like the walls were shrinking by the second. She stood across the room, pacing near the window, arms folded, one heel clicking with each step. The skyline behind her was stunning, but she looked anything but. David, she said again. Say something. I stayed by the long dining table, fingers resting on the back of the chair I'd abandoned 20 minutes ago. Michelle stopped pacing. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. I looked at her calm. I didn't stop you. That quiet hit harder than a scream. She exhaled sharply. Okay, fine. Yes, there was someone. But it wasn't serious. It wasn't even, she searched for the word. It wasn't real, David. It wasn't love. You don't have to convince me, I said. I believe you. She blinked. You do? I nodded once. Yeah, it wasn't real. That's exactly the problem. She faltered, voice cracking now. It was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. I was trying to feel something. Trying to prove I still mattered. And did you? I asked. Feel anything? Her silence said everything. I thought I needed more, she said softly. But all I did was burn down what I already had. I stared at the table. At the empty glasses. At the place-setting sheet arranged like it could set the tone for redemption. I want to fix it, she whispered. I want to fix us. I shook my head slowly. You want to fix the part that makes you feel guilty. Not the part that made you careless. Tears welled in her eyes. She took a shaky step toward me. I can change. No, I said, finally meeting her eyes again. You can't promise that anymore. That's the point. Her face crumpled. The only thing meaningless, I said, is saying you've changed when the damage is still echoing off the walls. Michelle reached out. Please, just give me. I stepped back. Her hand dropped. Then I turned, picked up my jacket, and walked toward the elevator without a single backward glance. Behind me, her voice rose into the empty loft. Don't walk away. That's not how this ends. I kept walking. You think you're so noble now, she yelled, almost laughing. You're no saint, David. You're just scared to try again. The elevator door slid open. I stepped inside. She didn't follow. The doors closed with a quiet click, and with it, the last of whatever we had left. The air outside was sharp and quiet. The kind of silence that comes after something has finally broken and there's nothing left to say. Laura's car sat across the street, headlights low, engine quietly humming. I crossed slowly, the cold seeping into my jacket, but I barely noticed. She unlocked the door the second she saw me. I slid into the passenger seat, pulled the door shut, and stared ahead for a moment before saying anything. You stayed. I figured you'd need a ride, she said. Then after a beat, and someone to not ask you what happened. I glanced over. She looked calm. Not smiling, not smug, just steady. She reached across the center console and placed her hand lightly on mine. Then, just briefly, leaned in and kissed my cheek. Not romance. Not a signal. Just reassurance. That quiet power again. We pulled away from the curb, the city rising around us, windows glowing like distant stars. Neither of us spoke for a few minutes. Then I said, "Some people lose everything because they never realized they had anything to begin with." Laura nodded. "And some find everything because they finally stopped chasing the wrong things." The streetlights slid past us in rhythm. I leaned my head against the window, watching as the skyline blurred behind us. And somewhere in the middle of all that quiet, I felt it. Not victory, not even peace, just space to breathe. For the first time in a long while. That was the end of my story. Laura opened her door when no one else did, not out of pity, but because she saw I was being forgotten by the person who once promised to remember me forever. She gave me space without asking for anything in return. So tell me this. Did she do the right thing by stepping in where her sister stepped out? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading. And if this story made you feel something real, hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep having honest conversations.